Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. Thank you for being here. I hope all the streams are working effectively. Um, Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's a big show. It's a big show today. Lot to cover, but I am so excited to bring in this guest. Please throw in a comment in the chat. Please click thumbs up. All that good stuff. Um, Today, I'm excited to talk to whistleblower Daniel Hale. This is his first live interview since being released from prison, and you may recall that he was the one who revealed the information that ultimately became the drone papers and gave so much information to the American people that we needed to know, that we're supposed to know about our government and about the behavior of our government and our military. And for that, he received one of the harshest punishments that we've seen for a whistleblower in this country. And yeah, it's just the stat that always has stuck with me is that 90% of those killed by U.S. drone attacks, or in 90% of drone attacks, unintended targets are hit, meaning innocent people. That's just one of the many things that are revealed that we should know. And anyway, without further ado, I'm going to bring in Daniel Hale. Hello, Daniel.
Hey, what's up?
And I also didn't get a chance to mention that you in 2024 received the first ever Ellsberg Whistleblower Award, which is pretty amazing. And I just want to, maybe you hear it too much, maybe you don't hear it enough. I just want to thank you on behalf of the American people for the information that you gave us that we should know. We should know about what our government is doing in our name. So thank you.
Uh, Thank you, Lee. I appreciate that.
Um, I do want to talk to you about current topics and topical stuff because I know you have a lot of opinions on that, and I'm excited to hear them. I just wanted to kind of start off up top with kind of a broad question, though, about your prosecution as a whistleblower, about them locking you away. I think you were sentenced to 45 months and ultimately served 33 months. And uh, do you feel you were at all treated fairly throughout this entire process?
Yeah, thank you. First off, thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate being here. Um, Nobody's really asked me that question before, and so I've never had to really answer it before. But I had a lot of time to consider it over the years, um, and I've read some report. Sorry, in terms of like the fairness and legitimacy of my prosecution, it would be difficult for me to say uh, that my um, that the whole process was demonstrably unfair, or that uh, I got I got the short end of the stick, or that I was treated unfairly or differently than others. Um, you really have to take everything into context and put it into perspective.
Well,
And it would be
you put out
Go
an
ahead.
interesting article comparing the documents you had versus the documents Biden had, and how you were not allowed to really bring forward evidence saying that you needed to act or that you had acted for good reasons, right?
Yeah, I did write that. That was I got the inspiration to write that in the days after, because that was all that came down within the day after I was released from federal prison to a halfway house. All told, I served 38 months in federal custody, a portion of which 4 or 5 months was in home confinement,
Mm,
which are still in federal custody.
right.
But of my sentence, I served the entire length of my sentence minus the good time that I received. And during that time, there was the Trump Mar-a-Lago case, documents case. There was the
Right.
Biden documents in his garage case, and then there were two special counsels. And um, I thought this was a particularly astonishing moment in U.S. political history and the overall history of the Espionage Act, which um, lefties and progressives have discussed and critiqued, ad nauseum for decades now, the unfairness of the use of this century-old law to go after dissenting voices. And here now we have a former president and a sitting president both being criminally investigated for the same violations of this law. And it's the wording of the statute that has been weaponized and used by the Justice Department to completely pillory. I'm sorry, not the right verb, but to just
Pillage.
undermine
Yeah.
any sort of defense that a potential whistleblower or any other person accused of mishandling government documents might put forward. Because, and as my public defenders put it to me, it's a strict liability law, and the government need only prove that did you do it and did you know that it was illegal to do it. Um, and it's a pretty, in terms of just like, it's a pretty wrapped up legal standard where, um, if you're being accused, like if the government has sufficient evidence to prove that you broke the law, securing a conviction is a layup. And we already know that the Justice Department has 98% conviction rate.
Right.
So for two presidents to be put under the scrutiny of this law, which is demonstrably unfair, I was really curious and amazed to see like how would the government react to this and what would be the political fallout of it. And what was rather astonishing to me was when, after all the hay that was kicked up about how important it is to always secure classified information for the safety and security of the United States, yada yada, national defense. Um, to have now, and how many powerful people, even generals, have been brought down from mishandling classified information, to now have two presidents, whom were by no means the first to have done this. They're just the first to have been caught. The Justice Department had, and it's particularly under a Boy Scout like Merrick Garland, had to act in the fairness and the interest of the rule of law, that they were going to take on these cases seriously to try to, sustain the appearance of impartiality. Um,
Right.
but it seemed like from the get that that there was always a wink and a nod being done with between the government and the American people, that these were never going to result in prosecutions, because this is the Espionage Act is a political statute, and crimes of espionage are political crimes, and we couldn't possibly he the justice system couldn't possibly find the means of holding presidents accountable for these same offenses. Now,
Right.
I wrote that because it just at the time it seemed very surreal to me, the standard with which the special counsel under Robert Hur found that it was that a prosecution of a sitting president, which the Justice Department now claims is something that is unconstitutional. They've referred it back to this. Robert Hur didn't refer to the unconstitutionality of prosecuting a sitting president. He just simply tried to um, convince people that Biden wasn't fit to stand trial because of his advanced age,
Right.
and um, and that no jury could possibly find him guilty for for the sake of the fact that he would be too sympathetic, which is an amazing standard to apply to a sitting president, let alone or to anyone, quite frankly, because
Right.
in no way whatsoever has the Justice Department ever shied away from a prosecution because the defendant was sympathetic to the public, save for those people who have power and money. Um,
Right.
and um, you know, you asked me like, did I feel like I was unfairly treated by the Justice Department? And some people have even, come to my defense and pointing out that I have every reason and right to feel like I got screwed over, and it would be very easy for me to you know, to just turn it back on me and be like, woe is me. Like, isn't this unfair? And like pound the desk at that like a petulant child. But I can't bring myself to do that for many reasons, not the least of which being that, in comparison to others, you did say at the top of the show that I was one of the more severely prosecuted. And in some ways you could say that, but not in every instance was I the most persecuted. Chelsea Manning was by
Yeah.
far the most persecuted and
and
tortured
and you look at
person.
us and you look at Assange, even though it wasn't in the United States, it was obviously, yeah.
Yeah, and just in comparison to just like numbers and time, Reality Winner received 15 more months than me. I was sentenced to 3 more months than Jeffrey Sterling, CIA, um, former CIA person who still maintains his innocence. That he had nothing to do with the crime, but he was sentenced in the same court for 42 months and 2 years of supervised release. I was sentenced in the same court for 45 months and 3 years of supervised release. Terry Albury received a 48-month sentence for 2 counts of the Espionage Act, and you know, I wrote that piece just because I really wanted.
Oh,
I don't know.
and
Sorry, go ahead.
Schultz will be in prison for like 45 years for leaking Vault 7, or they claim he leaked Vault 7. Anyway.
Jason Schwartz, or yeah, I think, or yeah, I'm familiar with his case,
Yeah,
but
Joshua Schulte, yeah.
Joshua Schultz. I'm not. I do think that he was on. What I would say is that in the overall scheme of things, it'd be easy for me to gripe, and I have griped quite a bit about the unfairness of my case and tried to point out the hypocrisy and the wrongness of it.
I'm more
But
than
in
willing to
terms of
gripe for you. So.
Yeah, thanks. But just in terms of like putting it in perspective and letting people understand, of the time that I spent under criminal investigation, which spanned a period from 2014 until the day that I left prison, the time that I spent in prison was the least difficult and easiest time I had during that period. The most difficult time I had under the fear and threat of prosecution was those waning years, because when I disclosed classified information to journalists who worked at The Intercept, it it took 6 months for the FBI to discover who I was. That resulted in an immediately served and issued a warrant on my house and my belongings. They followed me and watched me for a period of close to 5 years, and
Wow.
I was, and then by the time I was ultimately arrested and charged in 2019, I spent more than 2.5 years on pretrial for, for procedural reasons at first, and then due to COVID, the trial was continuously delayed, and then I was ultimately forced to have to plead guilty to a charge in order to secure, a more lenient sentence, lest I try to test the courts and test the judge's patience by holding a jury trial in the middle of a pandemic,
Right.
and one in which I had no defense whatsoever, because the government had successfully argued a motion midway through the pretrial hearings that any such, as they put it, good motives cannot be used as a defense at trial, and so my only avenue for defense was completely cut off, because the years I was I was silenced from being able to admit to the crime outright during pre-trial until I pled guilty, because an admission of guilt would have made me immediately liable and would have forced and compelled the judge to instruct the jury to find me guilty, because it would have essentially just been an admission of guilt.
Wow.
And I, from the get, had no, I mean, I had every desire to want to own up to the fact that I did this. If the government was going to put me in the position to have to do so, but a jury would have been not allowed to hear out my
Right.
rationale for doing it. And so at the
Yeah.
time that I decided to blow the whistle, and I'll say this and I'll leave it at that. Any person who's ever done this, who's ever decided, taken a look and been given access to classified information and seen things that they feel uncomfortable with and have had thoughts about sharing them with the public, has to first come to accept and understand that there is no chance whatsoever that they will be able to hide it from the government. And few people have ever successfully done that. I don't know of any person who has. There wasn't a person that has taken actual physical documents and shared them with the public that has
Yeah.
escaped public. So the first thing you have to do is you have to prepare yourself for the fact that you will probably go to prison.
And
And
Snowden is not Snowden has not been grabbed by the U.S. government, but they know who he is, and he's had to move across the world. So it's not like he's hidden from them. Yeah.
it's not. And I'll say this about Snowden. Snowden made the courageous decision and at the time to come forward and to put a face on it. And I think a lot of people, I think there's a benefit to that, but there's also a downside to it. It does take away from the story or the essential, like the harm that's being done, and it makes it about a personality. And it's good because Snowden has a rather likable personality. But I mean, I had that decision that I had to make. Do I want to remain anonymous or do I want to come forward? And at the time, I decided that remaining anonymous was the best thing because I did not think that I needed to make or wanted to make a story about me in any way.
Mm, yeah.
But there might have been a benefit to that, and in retrospect, I'll never know had I actually come forward at the time to say this is who I am and this is why I'm doing it. Instead, I presumed that the Obama administration had no desire to continue to prosecute whistleblowers at the end of his administration. But my whole saga spanned 3 presidents. I was investigated under Obama, charged under Trump, and sentenced under Biden.
It's crazy.
And yeah,
Yeah, and Obama had prosecuted more whistleblowers under the Espionage Act than all presidents before him. Of course, that ramping up has continued. It's not like it stopped with Obama. Um, but I want to discuss more topical issues. Just the other day or yesterday, basically, Biden has pardoned his son, Hunter Biden, for various crimes, although it's worded so broadly that basically it's any crime, anything he could have done, whether he's been prosecuted or not for it, since like 2014, which of course covers the entire time he was on the Ukrainian Energy Board. Anyway, I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
um, uh, you know, uh, there's been quite a bit of discussion about this because it is a rather titillating development in terms of just all that's happened in the last month. This being one of those things that people can like really like kind of grasp onto and kind of like it's very easy to identify and point out the kind of absurdity and hypocrisy of what's just happened,
Mm.
despite the fact that there was any serious person looking at this could like from the get go would have seen that this was a certain inevitability that Joe Biden would, if needed, would bail his son out because he has done so his entire life and career. And you know, conservatives, liberals, leftists, whatever, have been really harped on the fact that this is Hunter Biden, and Hunter Biden is such a train wreck of human being. He's not really like um, or they many people have rushed to defend this decision with absurd arguments and have attacked it for absurd reasons too. Um, the you know leftist people who have, I might I think that it's having gone to prison and having spent time in the federal prison system and um and being a felon, having gone through the judicial system, has informed my perspective on presidential powers and pardons, and who gets the lottery ticket of a presidential clemency and who doesn't, and what are the
Mm,
politics behind that. And but my whole life, I've been seriously, like, you know in intrigued by our prison system and our system of justice, and that we don't really ever talk enough about the presidential power of pardon, and how it's utilized. And there's a lot to be said about that. I don't necessarily go into, but uh, you know, it's taken for granted that it's just that that this is for certain people, or this is for political points. Presidents only, they don't, they have the power unilaterally, and absolutely, of the power of the president is the most absolute power on the planet, and of the most absolute powers they hold, the one thing that is most absolute is the power to pardon. No force in the government can overturn it. And I think there's reason to be said that that's a not necessarily bad thing that this be given to one person, because to democratize it isn't necessarily going to result in, or have better results in the end. You just would hope that it would be someone benevolent in charge of decision making, and
that
not
goes for
somebody.
pretty much all presidential decisions.
Right.
Yeah.
But in this instance, it stood out to me as the particular hypocrisy and sheer, just like bold faced, like just like kind of like thumbing your nose at the public for the, like, to base as you're going out the office. And this is by no means the most serious egregious thing that has happened, even in the last 48 hours with this government. But I think it really, and I think you and I were discussing this a bit earlier today, that it really stands out that over the entirety of the presidency, but of this presidency, but particularly the last year, since this administration has given its full-throated support every single day since October 7th, and the incessant Israeli bombing campaign and campaign of genocide against Palestine has been carried and lauded by the media, that the administration has put forth one deliberate, easily identifiable lie after another, from the State Department to the Pentagon to this president, and the media has carried that water for them every step of the way, despite the fact that every other sane, rational person who's looking at the situation can see and tell that they are lying,
Hmm.
and shamelessly and deliberately lying about a genocide. And it is um and it is so mind fucking for people to have to see and hear, and then also be told that what is happening is not happening. And
Yeah.
this Hunter Biden pardon is just another example of how the the media has, for the past week, been decrying Trump's potential, heads of department picks, from Kash Patel to Pete Hegsworth and Hegseth, I don't know. And
Heck so.
lots of these people are sick, depraved, you know, bastards, and just sheer monsters, human beings, and have no business being anywhere near the levers of power. But like, if we are to trust journalists and media and people who are supposedly the most educated, knowledgeable, trusted people in society, who are supposed to um whose ideas and views they portray as the moral standard for decency and, human rights, if we are to trust them, that what they say about Trump and the dangers of this incoming administration, many of which are true and founded. I don't think all of these dangers, until these, anyways. But if we were to trust them for that, then I mean, and then they turn around and carry. I mean, I saw the other day, there's like a 10-minute clip of journalists trying to draw comparisons between Biden and Trump during this election session, and holding up the example that Biden said he wasn't going to pardon his son for, and that Trump was the type of person who would pardon his son, as trying to separate and distinguish the two of them, and that to come out and in every journal and every time somebody asks a question, there's always the benefit of the doubt given to an administration that has deliberately lied to us, has knowing, for God's sake. I mean, I'll use the most blatant example was probably the Gaza seaport.
Yeah,
That
that was amazing.
the Biden administration, the Pentagon, for months tried to tell us whether this was an example of how they're doing everything they can. They're
Yeah.
doing the best that they can, and this is, and this is a tough situation, and that you shouldn't be too harsh on us, and that we could always just point to this port, and to see how they just repeatedly, made fools of themselves, but continued to try to play this with a straight face until they stopped hearing questions about it.
Right.
I feel like the Hunter Biden pardon is just another glaring example of that, and that the Democratic, like, Biden is trying, and very successfully at that. He's trying to burn down what little is left of the credibility of the Democratic Party as he leaves office. And
Well, you were in the military. What do you? I know you called it a genocide, as do I call it a genocide. But I just wondered if you had thoughts of the so-called military campaign in Gaza and these laughable claims by Israel and largely by the United States as well that they're trying not to hit civilians, but they're going after Hamas and they just happen to be hitting a lot of civilians. Yeah, I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
my thoughts are this likely the same as yours and any other sane, God-fearing person on this planet, that this needs to stop, and that, quite frankly, that if we were going to have if we were going to have any righteous, moral leadership at this current juncture, and fortunately, and this is just me personally, I think that that uh, the president needs to send in troops to put a stop to Israel's campaign, and if that means even deliberately going to war with a belligerent state, we have a right to defend, and if to the extent, like, I will die a pacifist, but if there was any righteous, you know, effort to push back fascism, fascism is here. It's not just knocking down our doorsteps. It is in the house, and it is paring it down, and it is willing to take its own self with it. And uh, uh, I don't know, man. Gaza is gone. It's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. There's people there, but they are within an inch of their lives left. And I think the very least of which we could do is, like, give them safe haven. And
Yeah.
but where do like that would require, taking millions of people away from their land that is been destroyed and laid to waste. And man, I don't know. I mean, I'm not an especially religious person, but I really wish people would turn to God in this moment and just, like, fear the, like, eternal damnation that they are headed towards.
That would be nice. I'm gonna wrap up here in a second. But I guess is there one other topic we haven't yet touched on that you want to jump in on, either Ukraine or the recent reports in Syria, where the U.S. is apparently not done trying to collapse Syria, even though 94% of all Syrians live in poverty now, thanks to the United States. Um, any thoughts on anything we haven't touched on?
Well, I'll say that, I mean, there's, like, everything's subject to change, and it's subject to change very rapidly come with this incoming administration. The media, again, going back to this, they have deeply undermined themselves, and they cannot be trusted in any way, shape, or form. And it is very difficult to take people away from the right and the conservative bloc in the way of, like, scapegoating migrants and minorities and people marginalized in society because the liberal media establishment has so much undermined itself. And so, you
Yeah.
know, when it comes in terms of just like, I'd say this, there's been a lot of hay being kicked up around these Trump picks,
Hmm.
and I think people should not be so chickens with head cut off. Don't listen to, and I'm not saying this from a reactionary perspective, but think of it this way: these are depraved, sick, often serial like sexual assaulters that are about to take control of the
Yep.
powers of the country, but they are also incompetent. They are fools. They are complete, and they are the dumbest people you have ever met. And for better or worse, they're probably going to run into a lot of internal opposition within these institutions that are irredeemable. It is terrible that a person like Pete Hegseth is a serial rapist and he's about to be given, one of the more powerful positions in the world.
Yeah.
But that is
Also,
also, but the
also
secretary,
Also Christian nationalist who believes we're on a mission to
Mhm.
destroy other countries. Yeah.
Well, and when you think about it and you really think about it, that's what the Secretary of Defense position represents. It is a nationalist position. And if there is any organization or institution within the United States that supports sexual violence more, it is the Pentagon. It is the Pentagon. The Pentagon is a monstrous institution, and yet when journalists are trying to pillar people like this um, for their monstrous immoralities in their own personal lives, they're doing it for the sake of trying to keep the status of these institutions and uphold them as though there's anything redeemable about being Secretary of Defense, as if Lloyd Austin is any more
Yeah.
redeemable than Pete Hegseth,
That
just because, yeah.
those are such. I'm just gonna say those are such great points because this is Pete Hegseth is what this degraded, horrific empire is vomiting up.
It's
He's a
what they deserve.
symptom. Yeah, yeah, he's a symptom, and like you're saying, it kinda, if he ends up getting the job, it kinda is like the face of the Pentagon is becoming the internal structure of the Pentagon, as opposed to being,
Yeah,
yeah, a nice
it's
little
inside
cuddly
out.
face. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on and talking with us. And I really, you're dead on in everything I'm hearing of your takes on these things. And anytime you want to come back on, please do. And again, I just want to thank you amongst all of us who, feel like we deserve to know what our government is doing. And unfortunately, you were the one who paid the price for revealing many of those crimes to us. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Peace.
Peace. All right, Daniel Hale. That was exciting. That was exciting to be able to talk to him, and yeah, and he was dead on in his analysis, and I'm really happy we were able to bring that to all of you. And judging by all the comments, you're agreeing with exactly what I'm saying. That an important individual who did something very important, an important act for all of us, and yeah, just so much love and solidarity to Daniel Hale. Real quick before I bring in Jaffer Khan and shift topics, I just want to say that it is Giving Tuesday, and we would like to keep this show going. So, if as a tiny bit of your Giving Tuesday, I'm not asking for thousands of dollars, but if you want to become a $6 a month member, that's at patreon.com/Lee Camp or leecamp.net, which is my locals page. You have to scroll down to become a subscriber. But yeah, Patreon and locals are the two places you can support this show on a monthly basis. You also, and this is my new schedule, get Friday episodes are members only. So you will be the only ones getting those. Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern, are for everyone. And then Fridays will be the members only episode. And that'll be up live on locals, and I believe posted after on Patreon. But yeah, and you get all kinds of perks as well. So as part of your Giving Tuesday, join up at patreon.com/Lee Camp. All right, please welcome Jaffer Khan to the show.
Hey guys, thanks Lee for having me. This is a great episode. Daniel Hale, Jafar Khan, two equally important figures in modern U.S. history. How do you get all these great guests?
It's true. That was one of my favorite things to do whenever I had like when I had Larry King on and when I had Roger Waters on, was I'd go, I know this is very exciting for you to be on this show right now. Larry King found it funny and said, Lee, that's one of my great honors to be on this show.
I've seen that clip. Yeah.
Roger Waters just kind of goes, that's funny.
Yeah. That's very Roger Waters of him.
It's very Roger Waters of him. Thank you, Mark Dansky, for joining up, for donating over on Rumble. And Mark Dansky says, Daniel's righteous clarity is profound and inspiring. Thank you both for the sobering discussion. And thank you for supporting the show.
Very true. If you don't mind me adding on that, I also really, that also really resonated with me when he was talking about righteousness and God. Like, I don't believe in God in the Abrahamic sense, but I do find myself when it comes like using terms like, I hope this person burns in hell. I haven't used that term so often in my life, but I do resonate with that, because it's like what's happening over there. You have this feeling of like, why aren't more people just being awakened by just a basic sense of morality, like a basic sense of wrong and right, which is what religion is supposed to teach us. It's just, where is that?
No, and I don't know. It's so breathtakingly horrific, and to watch them, my hope, perhaps my only hope in this thing, is that it is gutting whatever remained of people's ability to believe that the U.S. government, and perhaps also the Israeli government, but I don't know if anybody believed that to begin with, but the U.S. government is somehow moral, or is somehow bringing democracy to people, or bringing freedom. Oh, really? Then why every 36 hours do you ship bombs to rain down on children? And I'm just hoping that those people who were kind of, dumb enough or deluded enough to believe this are like, you can't continue to believe that. It's unbelievable. But
yeah, well, I hope so too. I have that same hope.
Okay, so this is a topic I don't cover all that often. I think that it is important, but there's a lot of nuance to it. And so I'm going to try and get into all the nuance. And usually it makes everyone hate me, which is, if reporting the truth makes everyone hate me, then that's what has to happen. I don't really have a choice. Some try to claim that I've never covered this, and that is absolutely not true. I have covered COVID. Rather early on in COVID, I said I was opposed to the mandates and the lockdowns, not because I was certain that they couldn't help people, but because those tend to, especially lockdowns, tend to harm those with the least among us the worst. Unless you are going to have a government that is going to really, really, and I mean really, look out for everybody whose lives are just screwed, then you can't just say, oh, stay home, lose your job, and just be fucked. And so it's like the poorest people, and sure enough, that's what happened, is the poorest people among us suffered the most. And the money that was dished out by the government was funneled largely into the hands of the rich. A million or so fraudsters also were able to steal some money, but mainly it was funneled into the hands of the rich. Anyway, that's a little precursor to what I'm about to get into. But so the House subcommittee has put out their report, a 2-year report on COVID, what was done to deal with it, to the sources of it, all those, every different topic. And I'm going to bring some of the shocking findings, but I'm also going to bring the nuance that it's some right wing and some non-right wing, but that some people don't want to bring you. Because unfortunately, nuance is reality. I have no idea what the thing they're trying to sell on the corner of this article looks like a sex device, but
I am turned on looking at that. I don't know why. I can't explain how.
That's the world we're in right now.
It's a sick world out there. That's for sure.
World. This is Yahoo News reprinting Fox News, so it's double idiocy, and then showing a sex device on the corner. But okay, so their headline is, and I'm also going to compare the New York Times headline to this headline, but their headline is COVID most likely leaked from Wuhan lab, social distancing not based on science, select committee finds. And let's see, and so they focus on a couple of those things, but one of the things that much of the kind of right wing and I don't know, I guess it's some other independent media, one of the things that they've been doing regularly is they pretend this is all of Congress. And look, I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm just saying don't lie to people. This is not all of Congress. This is a subcommittee of the House. So if it's a subcommittee of the House, say House subcommittee, say the House, or something. Whereas you have a lot of people running around going, Congress declares, and it's like, no, this was a Republican-led subcommittee. So, just be honest with people. That's I don't feel like I'm asking that much.
You and your crazy demands.
And here's a good example of this. And I don't exactly just want to shit on Mario Knopfel, who is one of the biggest news aggregators on Twitter, but this is largely the same thing that's being said by the right wing and many others. It's not just right wingers, but and he says, by the way, it sounds like it was written by AI, so it very well might have been written by AI. It has snark in it, but it feels like an AI attempt at snark. So I don't know what's going on here, but
AI will never learn snarkly.
It says, guess what? Congress just confirmed your COVID conspiracies. Well, it wasn't all of Congress. It was a House subcommittee, but okay. Yep, the new big COVID report is out. It's worse than you imagine. Turns out a lot of the crazy theories are pretty spot on. Congress now says the virus most likely came from a lab in Wuhan, China. That is true, and many others have said that. And there is a two sides of this. I had highlighted it earlier, but it seems to have disappeared. They're pointing to the fact that Wuhan researchers got sick before they believe anyone else did, and to the fact that there are aspects of this version of COVID that have not been found in nature. And then there are others who say that's absolutely not true. So make of it what you will. But that is what the House subcommittee report says. Then they say the report says that masking up and staying 6 feet apart didn't do much. And then he says, besides wreck the economy, destroy small businesses, and leave kids with massive learning loss and mental health issues. But of course, that's misstating things. It wasn't masking up that destroyed businesses and caused learning loss. It was the lockdowns. So, again, conflating things. Now, it does say, and let's see if the CNN report says this. Sorry. It does say that they weren't sure that the masking actually did much. Let's see. The report, so this is again from CNN, which, take that for what it's worth. But the report is critical of common COVID mitigation measures. Social distancing and mask mandates were not based on hard science, the report says, and prolonged lockdown caused immeasurable harm to not only the American economy, but also to the mental and physical health of Americans, with a particularly negative effect on younger citizens. Also, I want to point out that I don't feel enough has been made of the fact that there are a lot of kind of really meaningless, vapid, beautiful people in our country who had to cover their faces. And that was their superpower. That was all they had, you know, like they had nothing else interesting about them. And now they got to walk around covering it up.
When will hot people catch a break? It was just unfair to them.
I feel like we have not had enough debates about how ruinous this was to particularly hot, empty people. Like if you're hot and you're smart, you can show off the smarts. If you're hot and you're athletic, you can show off the athletics. But if you were just hot and nothing else going on, this fucked you up big time. And I don't, there hasn't been a congressional report on that. Really hasn't been brought to people's attention enough. But
that's why you got to organize, hot idiots.
So here's the nuance on the masks. The report did say that the masks masks is not based on hard science. And what they're speaking to is no, there was not hard science on whether masks were preventing the spread of this particular COVID strain. So that should have been made clear. Now, masks are obviously used regularly in hospitals by doctors. If they were completely meaningless, I don't think you'd see all the doctors wearing them. They do have an impact, but do they have an impact with this particular strain of COVID in the ways that we were told? And at times we were told completely ridiculous things like you should wear them when you're running alone outside. And, there was a lot of garbage that was spit out by our mainstream media, a lot of garbage spit out by our government, both Trump's government and Biden's government. This report seems to, from what I've read, seems to go like bend over backwards to make everything Trump did great, but also everything Biden did wrong. But you got to remember that Trump was also like the masking and stuff started under Trump. So they got to find a way to blame it on, oh, well, that wasn't Trump's fault. That was other people's fault. Like it really is quite an effort to try and free Trump of any blame in this thing. They also brag about Operation Warp Speed, right? This was the effort to get the vaccines out as quick as possible. I feel like the debate on that is ongoing, but they try and have it both ways where they go, oh, Operation Warp Speed was wonderful. And thank you, Trump, for doing that. But also we're not angry at the vaccines, which some people are angry at the vaccines and pretend that wasn't done under Trump when in fact it was. But then they try and say, oh, well, they told us that it would prevent the spread. Well, those who said it prevented the spread were idiots. Like, of course, like, to me, it feels like, of course, a vaccine is not going to necessarily prevent the spread. It's going to prevent you from getting as sick if it works correctly. And, to point to another aspect that, like, I'll just give you one example. I was speaking to, we'll just say, an influencer, one of the biggest names in this sphere of this type of coverage. And this is, a year in, I guess, to the pandemic or something. And their stance was, and you hear this a lot, that the vaccine is less effective than natural immunity. And that may be true or may have been proven true. But these people, and it seems like a lot of people don't understand what natural immunity is. Natural immunity is your immunity after having COVID and having survived. So basically, to those who have already survived COVID, what you then have in your body is better than a vaccine. But that's kind of just leaving out those who died from getting COVID. So it's the person I was speaking with clearly had no understanding of the fact that natural immunity is basically, you're speaking about those who survived. And
I don't know. I think dead people do have a pretty good immunity to COVID-19. I think you should check.
Except for that first bout.
Yeah, except for that first.
You mean there's secondary? It's unlikely they're going to get it again.
Exactly. Yeah, immunity.
Anyway, many of these things that I'm speaking about are kind of the nuanced reality that I would like to bring to this situation, but that's not what people do to get clicks. Like, you have to be it has to be all vaccines are evil or all vaccines are the best thing ever. Like, for example, one aspect of the vaccine fears that I totally agree with is the U.S. has like way more vaccines on the schedule than like most other countries, than a lot of countries, and maybe all countries. I don't know, but it is most countries. And the reason is because there's crazy amounts of money. If all of a sudden every child in America has to take your vaccine, crazy money in that. So you have just this ridiculous monetary reward for getting loads of vaccines on this list. And then you go to other countries. I lived in Sweden for several months. Nearly the number of vaccines on the list. Well, why is that? Is it because U.S. kids are just so much sicker? They just need lots of vaccines. It's obviously the monetary rewards of it. The U.S. has a unique system where, health insurance and health care is like one of the top 10 biggest industries in the entire country. So of course they're going to tell everybody, hey, use the thing that gives us lots of money.
Mm-hmm. Have there been any ads yet? Big pharma American ads for the coronavirus vaccine? I look forward to those coming out.
Have there been ads for it? I think there have been ads for it.
Have there been?
Oh yeah.
Because that's unique to us, obviously, the ads for drugs that we get on TV.
That is not true, Joffer. Fake news. New Zealand.
All right.
There's one other country.
Fine, Lee. One other country
that allows direct to consumer ads for medicines and for medications and prescription medication. And it's also the reason that we have part of several reasons that we had the opioid epidemic killing hundreds of thousands. Yeah. Because in other countries, they can't tell you run out and get, the morphine pill, the latest morphine pill. They can't do that in other countries. So they don't have people running out and begging their doctors for it. It's very, very important factor. So this report, I just like to point out for those of you who are kind of full on the full right wing side of things, that this report lauded the Operation Warp Speed and said it was a incredible feat of science that saved millions of lives. But for some reason, that is not, I feel like, the talking point you're getting from most right wingers. But the report also says the health officials in the Biden administration oversold the power of the vaccines. Yeah, I already talked about that. The report also accuses public health officials of taking part in a coordinated effort to ignore natural immunity and suppress dissenting opinions. They absolutely have worked very hard to suppress dissenting opinions. That's definite, and we've seen much of that suppression on various social media platforms. And then I like this part. The report points to weaknesses in the strategic national stockpile in the U.S. supply chain. It recommends that states have their own stockpiles of emergency medical supplies, which may offer a faster response and be more tailored to local needs. Oh, states should have their own stockpiles of the emergency medical supplies that you just told us don't work? They really are trying to have it both ways in this report.
They just can't let go of states' rights.
The states' rights. And of course, well, I'll say this after I read this next paragraph. It also encourages increased domestic manufacturing, especially of medications. Many of the medications taken by Americans are manufactured overseas. But further, the active ingredients in these medications, the chemical compounds used to make them, are overwhelmingly made in China. So much so that the supply has been described as China having a global chokehold on the chemical components of medications distributed nationwide, the report says. That's because you capitalist fucks send all of the manufacturing overseas, you idiots. Mm-hmm. Like, they do not seem to understand the systems that cause the problems they're saying are problems. Like, you sent all of the jobs overseas. You made it so that the medication was crazy expensive in the United States. So why do you think these things are made in other countries? And then they go, oh, it's China has a chokehold.
Yeah, China didn't come and put a gun to our head and be like, okay, we're going to manufacture everything for you.
Yeah, completely ridiculous. So let's see. I thought there was, one other aspect I want to bring up here. They also have recommended, I find this pretty funny, charges against Andrew Cuomo for potential prosecution because he lied to Congress. And apparently, while thousands of people were dying in elder care facilities, he claimed they weren't. And signed off on a report that he claimed he never saw. A House subcommittee has referred former Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York to the Justice Department for potential prosecution, accusing him of lying to Congress. He was accused of engaging in a conscious, calculated effort to avoid accountability for handling of nursing homes where thousands of people died of COVID. The referral, which was sent Wednesday night to the Justice Department, was signed by a subcommittee chairman, but the Democrat refused to sign it. The referral comes at a pivotal moment of Mr. Cuomo. So I'll read that in a second. But this dude, you remember there were months where he acted like only he could be America's papa during
Daddy
COVID.
Cuomo.
Only he could take care of us, and only he knew how to deal with it. And he put out a book that he was paid millions of dollars about his leadership during COVID. And I guarantee you he was thinking of running for president.
Mm-hmm.
And then it all collapsed with sexual harassment and assault charges.
That was a crazy time. I remember my
accusations.
liberal friends were like reposting pictures of Andrew Cuomo with like his nipples poking out of his shirt and being like, Daddy Cuomo. And it's like, what is going on with you right now? You're my friend. What has happened? And isn't it crazy that era, that nursing home Cuomo era, that feels like 20 years ago?
It feels like forever ago. Yeah.
Right?
Totally does. I mean, people may not even remember. He used to have like regular, I don't know if they were daily, but they were at least weekly press conferences as if it was the White House, where he'd sit there and at a podium and talk about how he's dealing with COVID. And he was acting like the president for a while there.
And liberals were like, wow, isn't it refreshing to have someone up there who actually is a decent person? Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah. Yeah. They were fawning over him. I mean, really, they were like, liberals were writing love letters to the guy. Then it comes out that he's, sexually harassed and assaulted people, or has accusations against him. He tries to cover it up, tries to deny it. Then it all eventually comes out. He steps down. But now he's getting ready to run for mayor of New York.
Great.
The referral comes at a pivotal moment for Mr. Cuomo, who is widely viewed as a potential and formidable candidate in next year's New York City mayoral contest, although it is not clear if he will run if Mayor Eric Adams stays in the race. Now, so these are the two Democrats, right? These are two Democrats running for mayor of New York. Adams, indicted by a federal grand jury on 5 counts of bribery and corruption. He's running against another guy who has lying to Congress charges recommended against him, killed thousands of elderly people in nursing homes, sexual harassment allegations against him, resigned as governor. And those two are your two golden choices.
At this point, we might as well write in P. Diddy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's just go all the way. Let's just have the famous pedophile, or the famous sexual predator in New York. Let's go number one. Let's go with P. Diddy.
Yep. I actually think P. Diddy would have a good choice. By the way, he was ordered to return the $5 million advance on his memoir, American Crisis, Leadership Lessons from the COVID-19 Pandemic. He was ordered to return the $5 million after the state ethics board ruled that he had used state resources to write it. So
that is hilarious.
Using state resources during a pandemic while he's the face of dealing with the pandemic to write his book.
The book where the premise was basically, I fixed the pandemic in past tense. Wow. Giving the money back. That's hilarious. That's brutal.
He's fighting it in court. I don't know if he's had to give it up back yet.
Good. He's a fighter. I've always said that about Andrew Cuomo.
Wouldn't it be hilarious if that was the aspect people latched on to? It shows he's a fighter. He's a good guy. Fighting for the truth. Fighting to steal the
when those nipples get hard, you better get out of his way because he's ready.
So anyway, I'm trying to say, and also that New York Times article, which is on the screen there, that, as far as I could tell, now this was a couple hours ago, maybe they've changed this since, so I don't know if you'll find one, but as far as I could tell, this was the only article about the House report on COVID-19 that just came out. So the New York Times is only covering the potential charges against Cuomo, appears to, at least as of 3 hours ago, leaving out all of the other things that are covered in the House COVID-19 report. Now, I'm not saying that we should do like all the right wingers are doing and take everything the House subcommittee says as gospel. We should not. But perhaps we should not just ignore it and act like it doesn't exist. And I know people on both sides of this issue hate me for daring to like bring any reality into it or nuance.
COVID-19 is like the Palestine of the left. Like we agree on Palestine. That part, that's easy, right? Like COVID, we can't agree on.
No, yeah. It is amazing how much people want to just shut down to anything that could upend an idea they had, for many months. Like if they devoted themselves to the idea that masks are 100% amazing and work so great, then they will just absolutely close their eyes. No. If anything comes out saying the opposite. But you also have the reverse, where if someone has devoted themselves to masks are meaningless, then when it's also revealed that masks are useful for other things, or they're useful for people that really have significant issues, or they're useful with other viruses, perhaps, then those people will do the exact and cover up their faces. And so you have like half the population just bumping into each other, covering their eyes, plugging their ears.
Yeah, no, it was a crazy. I remember my roommate at the time in 2020. There was a man who like angrily, she was wearing a mask, so he goes up to her and coughs in her face. Just a strange man on the street, and that was like some sort of like political dissidence on his part, I think, in his mind.
And then it seems that people can't have a legitimate discussion about this. So like right now in the chat, Me Panther is saying Lee is an expert. I assume he means that sarcastically. I've never claimed to be an expert. I'm not claiming to be an expert. I'm also not claiming to just not bring you various aspects of this because it'll fit some talking point that you wanted to fit. I'm not claiming to be an expert. I'm not claiming that, one side is always right on this. So, yeah. Kevin Wayne is trying to tell me that no one has ever made the sweeping claims on masks. Absolutely, people have. I've heard many people say masks do absolutely nothing. So you are incorrect, Kevin. Anyway. But again, I knew it's like you aren't allowed to bring any nuance to this. You have to only one set mind and ignore everything else. So. All right, I'm going to wrap up there, but I have Government Secrets tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. I also have another episode of Dangerous Ideas, 3 p.m. noon Pacific Thursday, and then the members-only episode will be Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. And Jaffer, go ahead and give your stuff, and then I'll give my closing here.
Just follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and if you live in New York, come out and see me do stand-up.
All right, man. Thanks a lot, Jaffer Khan, everybody.
Thank you, Lee. Thanks, everyone.
All right, folks. I will just one more time say that, first of all, I have my live Zoom comedy events coming up December 11th and 14th. $5. It's a whopping $5. And I've tried to make the point that no matter what, you should grab a ticket. Because if you don't want to come, support the show for $5. But if you do want to come and you're not sure you like it, then spend the $5. And if you hate it, I'll refund your money. So you kind of win no matter what. It's at leecamp.simpletix.com. And I'll put that on the screen here. There it is. leecamp.simpletix.com. Opening acts, Jonathan O'Donnell, Naomi Caravani, and Eleanor Goldfield. All of them will be opening the show. And then I will bring you an hour. It is now, I've given a title to the show. It's now The Only American in Tibet and Other Stories. I will be giving some of the most insane moments of my Tibet trip. I will also be covering a lot of other things. So much other stuff, including, all the garbage, to Trump, Biden. I will be talking about my trip to Israel. when I was like 22. I'll be talking about a lot of stories you haven't heard. So check it out. The Only American in Tibet and Other Stories, leecamp.symboltix.com. Okay, the other thing I want to say is because it is Giving Tuesday, I hope you will join up at patreon.com/leecamp. I'd love to, a lot of you have joined up. I'd love to get another 20 members on Patreon before the end of the year. That would be amazing. By the way, you get all kinds of perks. You get, I need to add that banner. You get all kinds of perks. You get my books, my ebooks, Dangerous Ideas and Bullet Points and Punchlines. And you get, depending on which tier you sign up at, you get my last Zoom comedy special, a video of that. It's called Laughing All the Way to Shitstorm. And all that's for $6 a month, 38 cents an episode. Plus, hopefully you want to keep this show going. Because hopefully you want to keep the show going so you can hear from people like Daniel Hale, his first interview ever since being released from prison. And he came on this show. I also had Reality Winner on this show. I've, of course, had Julian Assange's father and brother on this show and wife. So I feel like I bring you a lot of bang for your buck. All right. See you tomorrow if you're watching Government Secrets. See you Thursday if you're not. Keep fighting.
Well, brother, I salute you, though, man. You're one of the few that bring together this tremendous artistic talent and still be in such deep solidarity with oppressed people.
It's an honor to be here because I'll tell you, Lee, you have one of the funniest shows on television, bar none.
It's an enormous pleasure to be here. While I was waiting, I was leafing through your wonderful book.
The same to you. I love your show. Be happy to come back anytime.
Lee, this is one of the great honors of my long career, just to be in the same earth with you.
I'm sure.
We're just so blinded. We have so many blinders on because our society doesn't want us to know things. And so it takes shows like your show, and
it is clearly designed to eradicate.
Hey, good to see you.
Hey, Jill, how are you? Julian, thanks for joining me. Honor to have you, brother.
Consumerism is a theory that people should behave this way to help each other. It's not.
Mr. George Galloway, thank you so much for joining me in these dark times.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank you so much, Lee, for having me on. Keep fighting. Ha ha.